Guys, look at this gorgeous meal. This is sausage gravy on homemade flaky biscuits. Nothing better than this. Give this a try, you're gonna love it. It's such a good dish. Howdy folks, welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode, we're going to be making an old world breakfast dish. Now you can do this for dinner also. My mom did it for us occasionally for dinner. It's just so good. This is very simple, basic, old world country cooking. This is sausage gravy on top of homemade biscuits. So guys, let me show you how it's done. Come on, let's go. There we go. Hey guys, this is a wonderful, simple old world dish, like I said. Now, first thing you're going to need is to get you one of these little chubs of sausage, okay? Whatever kind of sausage you like the most, that's the one to go with. This is not a matter of, oh, you have to get this brand or that. This is a matter of to taste. So whichever of those patty sausages you like, go with that. Our biscuits, let's start with those. Biscuits are going to be 2 cups of flour. Now I like to use a high gluten flour. You don't have to, just an all-purpose will work fine for this. I have 3/4 of a cup of milk. You can also use half and half on this recipe. 2 tablespoons of lard. I know that sounds strange, but yeah, lard. It makes your biscuits lighter and flakier. It works, guys. You really need to try it. I'll be using 6 tablespoons of butter. Now your lard, your butter, your milk, flour, all of these ingredients need to be as cold as possible when you go to working them. And that's important, and I'll explain it in a little bit. In addition, you'll need 2.5 teaspoons of some baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, oh yeah, and we're going to get all of that mixed together. We're going to turn it into some magnificent biscuits. And I want to teach you what cutting in means and how to do it. So we'll get onto that in a moment. For your gravy, you're going to be needing 3 to 4 cups of your choice. Milk, half and half, or cream. On this one, I'm using half and half. 1/3, not 3/4, 1/3 of a cup of flour to make the roux for our gravy. Oh, it's going to be so good. So guys, let's get on with making these biscuits. Get those in the oven, and then we'll start cooking up that sausage. Come on. Okay guys, let's get on with making what's called rolled biscuits. And that means they're kind of rolled out before you cook them. This is a really simple thing. You have to create small bits of fat, meaning butter and or lard, or both, in between or small bits of fat inside of this flour, basically. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do what's called cutting in. First thing I need to do, put my flour into a larger bowl. That's the bowl I'm going to use to work all of this out. And the item I'm going to do this with is a little goodie called a pastry blender. Guys, I've had this one for next to forever. It still serves me well. I've been using it for decades, quite literally. So please go spend the $2.50 it costs to get one of these and have yourself a pastry blender for any time you need it. Whenever you are going to be mixing together lots of little powdered goodies along with fats and stuff, the first thing you want to do is handle your powder items. So we're going to put our baking powder right down in there. That's a double-acting baking powder. And I want 1 teaspoon of salt to put with that. Now, as I do with things, I measure salt into my hand. And that's what I've done here. That's 1 teaspoon of salt. And we'll put that in there. And I'm just going to kind of work those items together. There we go. So that's ready. For the fats, Now this was 6 tablespoons of butter, and if you look on the outside of a package of butter, it's actually labeled. So you don't have to guess how much tablespoons. You can just cut it according to the labeling. Once you get used to it, it's not that difficult. But you can also lay your packaging out flat and it shows you right where to cut. Isn't that handy? So there's the 2 tablespoons I don't need, and the rest of this is going to get cut into smaller pieces. And like I said, guys, the colder your fats are, the butter and the lard, the better off you are for this dish. And there's an importance there. Put that into our pan. The important thing about that, and what you need to know about it, you don't want the butter, or any of the fats for that matter, melting while you're working them into the flour. I'm going to get my lard in here also. Let's go ahead and start cutting this in. And then the last ingredient I have back here is, this is going to be half and half in my biscuits. I'm making them a little more rich, but I need to cut this butter in. Now let me get this camera angle right down in the bowl so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, now you can see how the butter and fat will collect on my pastry blender. Just knock it off. And you see how it's breaking it into smaller pieces? Well, what I'm looking for is to break all of this down into little pieces about like so. And that's what we call about pea size. So making your fat just right is important. And as I mentioned, making good biscuits, the colder your ingredients, the better off you are. If a little bit of that flour gets kicked out of the bowl, don't despair. It happens. Now see, that didn't take that long. And look at what we have. We have this flour with all those little bits in it, just like I was looking for, okay? And like I said, that's what makes for flaky biscuits. As these are cooking up, what happens to make them flaky is the flour separates just a little bit from those fats, and when they do that, it acts like a fried layer there, and it forms these little thin layers. It's the same exact way a puff pastry works, guys. Biscuits are in a way related to puff pastries that way. Now, our cream, I want to add in just a little bit at a time. I said cream, half and half. A little more. And just keep working it in until you have a dough. Here's the rest of it. Boom. The moisture in that cream acts as a binder on that. The next thing we have to do is get some flour out here so we can work this into biscuits. Well, here we go. To work your biscuits out, and this is simple, guys, and don't forget, turn your oven on. You're going to need that sucker at 425 degrees, and you're going to need a sheet pan or a piece of foil to cook these up on. First thing you want to do is to flour your hands. Get some on that board. That way, your dough's not going to stick to you or your board. The whole idea there, to make things easier to work. There we go. I'm trying to get all the rest of that out of there. The important thing about biscuits, do not overwork that dough. You see how I'm just kind of giving it a light workout here? Well, guess what? That workout is over. I'm going to need a little more flour, a little more on top. If you don't have a rolling pin for this, you can just press it out flat with your hand. And you don't have to make huge honking biscuits, guys. Now that's about a 1/2 inch thick, and it's only about 1 foot in diameter, okay? And that's going to make some biscuits that are, about 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch in thick. If you want thicker biscuits, you know, those real puffy ones, don't roll it out quite as much as this, and you're going to need probably a larger batch if you're going to want a lot of them. Now guys, if you don't have anything to cut biscuits out with, that means that you're normal, okay? A biscuit cutter isn't exactly the first item that everybody has in their kitchen. A glass works just fine, and this is the old world way of doing it. Remember, this is an old world dish, so let's stick with old world techniques. There we have it. I'll transfer these over to my cooking sheet, my baking sheet, and I have biscuits ready to go. Isn't that nice? Now, if some of them stick, you might want to use a scraper to free them up, just like that. And all of the rest of this dough is going to be gathered up and made into what? Biscuits, that's right. Just because. And I'm going to make one last one. And it's going to be just a little bit imperfect. And guess what? That's just the way the world is, isn't it? There's always one that's just a little bit imperfect. All right, biscuits are ready to go on the baking sheet and get baked up. Now the thing of it is some of these that are thin doesn't really matter, guys, because we're going to drench them in gravy. And it's really the crusty part of the biscuit that matters for that. Okay guys, now it's time for us to get on with what we're doing here. I have my oven heating, my biscuits are sitting up over here, my pan is ready to cook up my sausage and gravy in, and my goodies for that right down here. So what I'm going to do is we are going to cut the tip off of this. That little retaining clip right there, little metal clip. Cut that, pull it back, and I'm going to squeeze what's in this chub right out. And you want to remove what's in here, all you have to do is grab the end and kind of give it a twist and keep doing that, and it will force out very cleanly everything that's in that chub, okay? And I kind of figured out this little trick some years back. There you go. It's all extracted clean, and what little is left on the tip there is sort of inconsequential, if you know what I mean. If you want to drag it out, I guess you can. But that's my timer telling me in 5 more minutes to put them biscuits in the oven. Okay, now let's turn on the heat for that sausage. I'm going to take a spatula. I'm just going to break this up. So what I'm looking for here is crumbled sausage, plain and simple. And the other thing I'm looking for is the fat that's in this sausage. Okay, guys, this is real important. What we're going to be doing here is making a gravy. Why is fat important to gravy? Well, it is. It's a part of the whole binding process, and it's a great deal of flavor in the process. So everything that I can cook out of that meat into the bottom of the pan, being anything that browns and any oils and fats that come out of it, that is enhancement to my gravy. It's all done in this one pan, guys, and you're going to be really amazed at how this works. And there's a trick that I'm going to show you that's going to push you past people that are amateurs at making this dish. And I'll show you what that is here in just a little bit. Now I'm going to set this over a medium-high heat, guys. My pan has come up in temperature. Now what I'm doing here by turning it and chopping it, as it cooks, it'll cook together. And if you do this, that'll break it back apart into those nice little crumbles we're looking for. So guys, as you see, this is a beautiful, delightful meal. We don't need to season this, all right? Think about it. All the seasoning is already in there. That is a processed meat. There's plenty of sodium in it. There's plenty of spices and flavors in it. Everything is already built in right there. My timer's about to go off for my biscuits. Once you've done this long enough, let me tell you. Biscuits in the oven, guys. Whew, there we go, guys. Biscuits in the oven. Now, I'm going to go ahead and set my timer, and usually my biscuits take around, 10 to 12 minutes. So that's exactly what I'm going for. And I want to set this for 10 minutes, check it, and if it needs a few extra, that's what I'll do. So as you see here, hey, it's not that tough, is it? Now, this step right here is important. Even though this has lost most of its pink and it started to turn a little bit on the gray side, I want this to cook down just a little bit more. I want it to develop some brown. I want it to get some brown on the bottom of the pan. That's flavor, guys. What that is, that's caramelization. And that's where you're basically starting to brown sugars and getting them to stack on top of one of each other. That's caramelization, and it's really cool. It leads to these complex and very delicious flavors. That's that searing on the outside of meat that makes it so tasty. Caramelization. Two things are happening on the outside of meat right here. Let's take a close-up and I'll explain those two actions for those of you that are watching the cook-along tutorial. Come over a little closer. Now guys, looky here. See how the meat has kind of turned to this grayish brown color there? Now what's happening here is you've got two different things happening at once. You have a Maillard reaction, okay? And that happens more so, it's more recognizable in things like bread than it is in things like meat. But it's still happening. And that is a reaction between amino acids and reducing sugars that causes it to change color to a grayish or brownish color. So that's one kind of browning that's happening here. The other type of browning is what's going on down here in the skillet, and that's what you see up here on the side. This right here, this brown color, that is actually caramelization, and that's an effect that we're going for right now. So I'm doing two things. I'm rendering out some of the fat that's in my sausage, and the other thing I'm doing, I'm causing a flavor buildup in this. It's only been a couple of minutes, and I'm starting to get that oil release I'm looking for, and a little bit of that browning that I've been looking for. Isn't that nice? Let's take another close-up at that so you can really see that browning I'm talking about. You see that edge, that brown edge up in here? That's what we're looking for. So I'm just going to let it keep on cooking. I don't want too much of that, guys. I don't want everything to get kind of dark and overcooked, because yuck, that's just not cool. This is about patience. If you try to rush this by hitting it with too much heat, you're really going to mess it up. Things have to take the amount of time they take sometimes. That's my timer telling me I have 5 minutes left to check my biscuits. So we're 5 minutes in on that bake. Now you notice I don't try to break all of the sausage into tiny, tiny pieces. There's some big pieces in here and there's some small pieces, and I want them all mixed in together because, you know, it's that kind of random variety that makes for good sausage gravy. Nobody wants just specks of sausage in their gravy. They want pieces. Now at this point, you're going to need a separate bowl. You're going to be placing all of that sausage into a separate bowl to make your gravy. Guys, this is the point that I really wanted to make in this show, and I've seen this mistake in a lot of other people's, and I would like to say, hey, angry grandpa and kid behind the camera, sorry to have to say this. When you're making your sausage gravy, you don't flour the meat, guys, okay? And there's a good reason behind it. If I put flour on this meat, I'm losing a little off the side there. If I put flour in this meat, what's going to happen is I'm going to end up with some nasty meat, first of all. The meat's going to have a really bizarre, yucky kind of texture to it, and it's not going to cook the flour properly. And the reason is the flour on bottom is going to get cooked thoroughly, but the flour on top won't. And if you'll look here, this is a perfect example. Do you see how some of the meat is still a light gray, yet some of it has turned very brown? Your flour will end up being cooked exactly the same way, and we don't want that effect. What we want, and this is the point right here, half of my meat is brown. This is the point where I want to go ahead and get my flour in there. So what do? I pull my meat up to one edge. And what that's doing is it's allowing that fat to flow down. And the idea here is I'm wanting to keep as much of the fat as possible down in that pan. That fat is what's going to be a part of my roux. Now guys, in addition to the fat that I have in here, which is substantial, there's more than enough really, but I want to bring a little more flavor to it, so I'm going to add some butter to that. Now this is salted butter, so it brings a unique kind of flavor to your roux. I'm going to put my flour in here, and I'm going to switch from using the spatula to a whisk. I put my flour in this, sprinkle it in, give it a stir, sprinkle some more in. Now, as I mentioned, we don't flour the meat, okay? If I don't properly cook this flour in this roux, I'm going to end up with some real problems on it. So let's take a look at this. You see how it has a light color to it right now? Kind of a butter and flour color mixture. I'm wanting that to turn to a light tan, about the color of a peanut, as is the way I like to describe it. This light tan color means that that butter is starting to brown, that the flour has gotten cooked off at that point, and it's ready to receive the cream or the milk, whichever way you're going with it. And what's going to happen here? This mixture, this roux, is going to foam up, and it's going to cook really beautifully. And guys, at this point, if you want to, once your biscuits are most of the way cooked, just shut down the oven. It'll keep cooking on the residual. So you see the color I'm getting there is a little more tan-like now. Now one of the reasons it's changing color here, guys, is because it's also picking up some of that fond that we built in the bottom of the pan. Now the fond, what that is, that's that caramelized surface. That's what they like to call that, is a fond. See how this has gotten cooked down now? Now folks, look at this. That's when your biscuits are cooked right there. All right, let's go ahead and get busy making this gravy. You see how I pour it in there? Just go ahead and get it on in. That roux is thickening as we speak. There we go. Now, two things that are going to happen there, guys. If you're not used to doing this, I am used to doing this, but if you're not used to doing this, something that you might want to take note of. When I was pouring my milk in there, if I went too slow, as you saw, it started building up on the edges and started getting thick. If you do it at the wrong speed, you're going to have lumpy gravy, okay? If you end up doing it, too fast, you may get your gravy too thin, and it'll take a while to thicken up. And I'm going to turn my heat down to a medium to thicken this up, because the bubbling I'm getting is beautiful. I'm starting to see the bottom of the skillet a little bit as I stir it. I'm going to add a little more of my cream. Remember, we started with 3 cups. And I said it would take 3 to 4. And the reason I say 3 to 4, guys, it depends on the flour. The same measurement of 2 different kinds of flour will give you 2 different gravies, okay? Meaning that one gravy might be a little thicker than the next if you use exact amounts. Flour is weird that way. Now that we have this beautiful gravy, wonderful gravy, this is where the chef does what the chef does. You want to get a spoon, you want to find out what this tastes like. Does it need adjustment? Do I need to put in seasoning, salt, anything like that? Yes, I do. It's delicious, but it's flat. So I'm going to add salt right there. It's about 3/4 to 1/2 teaspoon. I'm going to drop some black pepper in it. And I want a teaspoon or 2 of black pepper. Now always remember that lesson. Taste it, find out, is it flat, is it bland, does it need something? It's getting thick again, a little thicker than I want. I'm going to put the remainder of my 1/2 and 1/2 in there. And I may have called it milk earlier, but I'm using 1/2 and 1/2 today, guys. It gives a little more rich flavor. It simply has more butter fat in it. Now let's do our taste test again. Do I need to adjust that again or not? Oh, yummy. Spot on perfect. Now that my gravy tastes right, it's time to get that sausage in there. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have full-on real deal sausage gravy. And let me tell you something about this. You're going to want to go ahead and allow your sausage, when your sausage gravy is sitting, you want to go ahead and cover it. Don't allow this to sit open or it'll skin over. Yeah, I'm turning off that heat to it. My gravy is finished. My biscuits are ready to go. Looks like all I need to do is pull out some fruit and turn this into a beautiful, beautiful breakfast. So let me get this out of here and get this covered. Now guys, I have set myself up a little plate with some fruit on it. I like some berries with my breakfast. Well, let's take one of these biscuits. Look at that. Look at the flaky quality on that, how it's coming apart. What did I tell you about keeping those fats separated out? Isn't that too cool? And I want to take one of these thin biscuits like it is. We're just going to stack him right here, just like so. There we go. Now, time to fill it up with some gravy. Best part right here. And guys, plating is so important, because let me tell you something. When it comes to plating, when it comes to the foods that we eat, well, the first thing that we do is we eat with our eyes, okay? And if what we're having isn't appealing to the eye, then it's not going to be enjoyable. So it needs to really stand out. There you have it. Beautiful, isn't it? Sausage gravy with biscuits. Oh, what a wonderful delight. All right, there it is, guys. That is a gorgeous and wonderful dish. You gotta try this out. This is old-fashioned country. This is country cooking, folks. And let me tell you, when it comes to it, the flavors, can't wait. Nothing like the gentle crunch of a perfectly flaky biscuit. These beautiful warm tones of the sausage, cooled by that cream gravy. Guys, there is nothing like a country style cream gravy. The flavors, oh, and then you throw that sausage in there. Unbelievable. Give this a try, you're gonna love it. Thank you very much for watching my show, guys. I do appreciate it. And to my subscribers, I would like to say cheers and a special thank you to you guys. For those of you that write in regularly, I would like to say thank you to you. I do appreciate your support. It is very appreciated. Guys, if you haven't subscribed, please do. Please share my videos, click the like button, that does help me out. And if you would, also have a good day. Goodbye.